SpongeGex here. After doing a recent review of Super Mario Party Jamboree for Nintendo Switch, I thought it would be fun to go back and try reviewing every console entry in the Mario Party series, and I might even do Mario Party DS down the line since I have the Wii U Virtual Console version of it. So otherwise I don't think I'll be doing the 3DS games since I don't really have a way of displaying my 3DS onto the computer I have, so I don't really have a way of recording footage off of those. But before I got started with going back to revisit the Mario Party series, I was given a cruel reminder of what could have been. So before we go and look back at the Mario Party franchise's past, let's look back at the time when the original makers of Mario Party, Hudson, failed at making a Mario Party equivalent for Sonic the Hedgehog for Sega's Dreamcast. Today, I'm going to talk about Sonic Shuffle. This is a game that at first glance looks like a lot of fun. It's Mario Party, but with Sonic characters. And it's even made by the original developer of Mario Party, Hudson Soft. So this game was released in between the release of the popular Dreamcast game, Sonic Adventure, which was Sonic's first 3D adventure game, and Sonic Adventure 2. So this really is the odd one out of the Dreamcast Sonic titles. So, it's basically Mario Party with Sonic the Hedgehog, and it's made by the original developers. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. I really wanted to like this game when I first saw and heard of it. I remember just learning about this game back when I first got a GameCube and became a fan of the Sonic series with my introduction of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. So around the time when Sonic Adventure and Sonic Heroes came out, I went online to learn more information about the Sonic series, and there was one title that stuck out to me. I just noticed, this is one that they didn't announce that they're re-releasing like they did for Sonic Adventure. And so, Sonic Shuffle, yeah, that one looked very different but interesting. It just reminded me of Mario Party, but with Sonic characters running across these game boards and competing in crazy mini-games. It looked like a lot of fun, and not to mention how it has the most unique art style out of any Sonic game, being the only entry in the series to be cel-shaded, just like another popular Dreamcast game, Jet Set Radio. Back then, it wasn't very common for people to go online and share their opinions or reviews on video games. You really only got to see these reviews in magazines and stuff like that, so I wasn't able to find any footage or commentary about the game compared to nowadays where it's more easy to find this stuff. But even then, though, there still aren't a lot of people who talk about this game. All you know is that people will go around saying it's bad. And so that's one reason I really wanted to make this video. I wanted to go in depth on why this game is so bad to many. There are just some people who can't bother explaining why this game is a disappointment, so that's why I'm here. So, back in 2006, during a vacation to Chicago, I found a used Dreamcast and a copy of Sonic Shuffle, and it was at a bookstore out of all places, and I bought them for a total of $60, $50 for the console and $10 for the game. Not a bad deal compared to how badly the value for these games have spiked nowadays. So I was psyched to finally be able to play the game and see it in motion, and my excitement died down really fast, and my frustration and boredom rose pretty quickly. Unlike the Mario Party games, Sonic Shuffle has a heavy emphasis on story, with actual voice acting and cutscenes. It sounds like a cool idea, but it tries and fails to tell a story that just does not fit the gameplay at all. I honestly can't even tell you what the story is about. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense, one of the worst stories I've ever seen in a Sonic game. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy are sucked into a place called Imaginary Land, the Land of Dreams, but it has been destroyed because of an evil being named Void. He broke free from a goddess of light, causing her to split in half, into two halves basically, one called Void and the other called Lumina. And this just confuses me because they make it sound like Void somehow is... So Void's the one who caused the split of this person, despite how he's the second half of something, and he wants to harness the powers of something called the Precious Stones. Honestly, I don't get what his motive is. All we know is that he wants to destroy this thing called the Precious Stone, which he already did, and we have to gather the pieces and prevent him from getting them. I honestly have no idea what's going on in the story. It's a whole lot of nonsense. So, instead of Chaos Emeralds, the MacGuffin in this game is substituted by these things called Precious Stones. And so Lumina summons Sonic and pals to team up with her, stop Void, and restore people's dreams, basically. So it really doesn't feel like there's much at stake. It's like, who cares? It's just dreams. So it's not like if Void wins, the world will plunge into darkness. It's just a made-up place. Who cares? So it's just one of the dumbest and most confusing Sonic plots ever. It makes Sonic 06 look more engaging and logical in comparison. So they try presenting Lumina as this pure beacon of light with innocence, and she just wants Sonic and pals to work together to adventure through these corrupted dream worlds, restore them, and save everyone's dreams. Yet the gameplay reflects none of her pure intentions. Why do the cutscenes show Sonic and pals needing to work together, only to show the characters killing each other across mini-games and board maps, like stealing rings and precious stones from each other? It just does not make any sense. These cutscenes are just such sugary nonsense, and it does not match the gameplay at all. I mean, as stupid as the plots from the Mario Party games are, at least they kind of add to the gameplay, because right from the start, they usually establish that the characters are competing to be number one of something. They want to be the superstar, they want to have their name on a theme park or something, or they just want their birthday presents. And so, yeah, it's harsh, but it kind of gives you an explanation for why the characters are beating each other up out of nowhere. It establishes that, yeah, they're competing. This game, it does not. It flat out establishes that they need to work together to save the dream world. Yet the gameplay reflects none of this. Not to mention, this has some of the worst voice acting I've ever heard in a Sonic game. Now, I was never a fan of the original voice actors from the Dreamcast games, but somehow they do even worse in this game, especially with the characters that Lonnie Minella plays, which she plays both Void and Lumina. And I honestly have no idea why there are so many people who love Lonnie Minella. I hear some people say like she was the best voice of Rouge the Bat or something, and I'm just like, what are you guys talking about? She's the most stilted, robotic, and emotionless voice actress I've ever heard. She's like the Tommy Wiseau of voice acting when it comes to females.
But one day, darkness draped the precious stone, and Void...
The precious stone will shatter if I touch it. Imaginary world. My world. The world of my dreams.
What the hell is he talking about? I will admit she's played some memorable characters over the years, like Rouge the Bat or Tikal, but they've been done so much better in other Sonic adaptations. Not only is the voice acting terrible, but the cutscenes are also really bad. Some of the stiffest and most robotic-looking cutscenes I've ever seen. The only decent-looking cutscenes are these pre-rendered cutscenes, like the one at the beginning of the game. It tries pumping up players for the underwhelming disappointment that lies ahead. And then after completing each level, you get like these little cutscenes of the worlds getting restored. The only downside is that they are very low res, so it's too bad that we'll likely never get HD restorations of these cutscenes. So most of the in-gameplay cutscenes involve the characters awkwardly standing around or slowly walking with the most stilted and limited animation ever seen in a Sonic game. It makes the cutscenes from Frontiers and Forces look amazing in comparison. As awkward as Sonic Adventure's animations were with their really wonky mouth movements, they were still very ambitious and expressive for their time. It felt like the animators weren't even trying in Shuffle, though. The audio quality and sound mixing was really bad as well, but that was typical of near every Sega original on Dreamcast. If it wasn't for Sonic Chronicles, I'd say Sonic Shuffle has the worst music out of any Sonic game.
When the precious stone shattered, Illumina lost her powers and became a prisoner in a faraway world.
Void!
As bad as the audio mixing for Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were, they still had really good music. A lot of the level tracks and background music, even some of the ones that were played during the cutscenes, they're very memorable. And like if you listen to them on their own on the soundtrack, with all the distracting sound effects and awkward voice acting ruining it, you can really hear how good the music really is. It might be in lower quality nowadays, but you can still hear the heart and soul behind it. Sonic Shuffle, it's just some of the most irritating music I've ever heard in a Sonic game. So there are 5 board maps altogether. You start off with only 4, but there's a 5th one that you can only unlock by the story mode. I've described many times about past Mario Party games why requiring players to complete games that require hours of luck is a terrible idea for any story mode, but Sonic Shuffle takes it to an extra level of annoying and frustration. Sonic Shuffle games drag on even longer than a game of Mario Party, and they take even dumber luck to win. Sonic Shuffle has some similarities to Mario Party, where in Mario Party, the goal was to collect the most stars by the end of the game to win. You usually had anything between 15 to 30 turns to get this all done, as you collect coins from spaces, events, and mini-games to help you buy stars, items, and services to help keep you on top. Sonic Shuffle does this differently by not having a predetermined number of turns unless you're playing Versus mode. It goes on until 7 precious stones are collected, and they always spawn in the same spots every time, which kind of ruins the charm, where in Mario Party the stars could spawn on any space on the board map, where here it has a pattern for which the 1st and 7th ones are always placed. Instead of coins, we collect the rings from the Sonic games, but rings aren't as important as coins were in Mario Party, where you had to have those to get the stars. I honestly wish that was an option here, because the rings are just annoying in this game. They only have like one purpose, and they're not even necessary. So you still got the blue and red spaces, but instead of giving you or losing 3 coins, instead you gain or lose 3 rings. There is a multiplier effect, though, which is kind of a cool idea, where if you go many spaces in a row landing on a blue or red space, it'll either multiply up or down the rings that you gain or lose. So if you land on a blue space 3 times in a row, that means it will multiply by 3, giving you, instead of 3 rings, you'll get like 9 rings. That's a really cool idea. I'm surprised they never did that for a Mario Party game. There's a weird gimmick where after 10 blue or red spaces are triggered, Eggman will appear and mess with the players by threatening to either increase the size of the red rings to double the rings they take from you, or shrink the blue spaces to give you less rings. But every time this happens, the opposite happens. So instead of shrinking blue spaces, they'll become bigger and stronger due to Eggman's machine backfiring, while the red ones shrink and become weaker. The biggest difference between Mario Party and Sonic Shuffle is the way to travel. Now in Mario Party, we traveled with dice blocks, but in Shuffle, we get a random deck of cards that range from numbers 1 to 6, along with a special card that makes us spin a roulette from 1 to 7. We pick a numbered card and move as many spaces as the number on the card. It sounds like a neat idea, but it's held back for a number of reasons. For one, players will constantly steal your cards, and it feels like they always pick the cards that they need in order to land on a space they're aiming for. It feels rigged. It's very one-sided. You cannot see your opponent's cards either, which adds to the unfairness. And two, unlike in Mario Party, where you can collect a star just by walking past a star space, in Sonic Shuffle, you have to land on a Precious Stone space in order to collect the Precious Stone. And that can be very impossible when CPUs steal all of your good cards and you struggle to keep blindly picking cards that make you miss your destination, causing the game to drag on with more frustration. Then there's the matter of landing on Precious Stone spaces. If you thought they would just hand you the Precious Stone, oh boy, welcome to hell. You're forced to go through these stupid RPG-style battles where an enemy shows up with a numbered card and you have to pick a card from your deck that matches or exceeds the number on the enemy's card to defeat it. But it's not enough for that, because that would be too easy. You gotta do a roulette. For instance, if an enemy has a card with a 3 on it, and you select a card with a 3 or higher on it, you'll then have a roulette from 1 to the number that matches your card. And so you have to then land the roulette on either the 3 or a higher number to defeat that enemy. However, if you land a number lower than what the enemy has, they will attack you, you will lose rings, and you'll get pushed back a few spaces. It is one of the most frustrating ways to ever get a collectible I've ever seen in a Mario Party-styled game. There's also a stupid punishment for whoever was furthest away from the Precious Stone upon being collected. Eggman spawns and drops a weight on the furthest from the stone, causing them to lose half of their rings, because this game just can't give anyone a break. These battles aren't just for the Precious Stones, but there's also these battle spaces scattered across the boards, and if you land on them, you have to compete in a smaller scale battle where winning just rewards you with 1 or 2 items that can help you on your journey, including different items called speed rolls that can help you use either 2 to 5 cards in one turn, protection items, and sabotage items to sabotage opponents. It's just too bad that most of these sabotage items are roulette based, which makes a lot of them too much of a useless gamble to be bothered with. Some of them could even backfire on yourself, so yeah, I'm not a big fan of the items in this game. They're not as good as some of the Mario Party ones that were introduced in like Mario Party 2 or 3. So everything about this game just sucks the fun out of Mario Party, and it leaves us with nothing but tedious frustration and boredom. It's like it took all the fun parts of Mario Party and only left in the frustrating parts of Mario Party and making them even worse. Compared to my original playthrough on Dreamcast, I tried making the game a bit easier while recording footage for this review, for I was using a Dreamcast emulator. And so I tried using save states and a cheat to give me infinite rings to see if that would make this game go a little easier. And no, the game still feels rigged as hell. If only there was a code to just skip to the end and declaring you as the winner so we can just get through the cutscenes and end it, but nope. So either way, I still had to go through the entire game, and these cheats really didn't feel like they were helping me much. Instead of Bowser spaces where Bowser antagonized us, Eggman takes up that role in this game, but there are no Eggman spaces per se. Instead, when the players start off their turns and we get our new decks of cards, one player will have an Eggman card in their deck, and anyone who manages to pick it will suffer from a roulette wheel where Eggman tortures them by either stealing rings, making them lose a turn, or giving them a cursed item. Eventually, everyone's cards will get used up, which causes a new random deck of cards to spawn, starting the whole cycle over. Mario Party had those Boo spaces where players could pay the Boo Ghost to steal coins or steal stars from other players. In Sonic Shuffle, after certain precious stones are collected, a void will appear, and if you go inside of it, you'll meet the character Void, and he will offer you to steal a precious stone if you give him 50 rings. However, it's all done by a roulette, so you don't just pick which player you want to steal from, which really feels like a waste of 50 rings. This is honestly only best used if each player already has a precious stone. Otherwise, it's not really worth risking 50 rings just to get nothing in return, unless you're using an infinite ring cheat like I did. But so too bad it's not like Boo, where you can just pick whoever you want to steal from. So unlike Mario Party, where every turn leads to a minigame, minigames are only triggered by landing on these exclamation mark spaces that trigger either a minigame or a mini-event. So the mini-events are these mini-scenario cutscenes where the characters stumble onto a strange location, situation, creature, or character, and the random event occurs. Usually more bad than good. Some lead to multi-choice options, which really don't matter in the end, for they're all rigged to have the same outcome no matter what option you choose. So far, the game has a lot of negatives, but surely the minigames will make up for it, right? Sadly, no. These are some of the worst and most broken minigames I've ever played in a party game. The CPU are broken and undefeatable, the controls are sluggish and unresponsive, and the minigames are brutal and just not at all fun. Remember how in the original Mario Party, when if you lost certain minigames, you got punished really badly? Like, it would just take a bunch of coins from you, and that option has been missing in every Mario Party game since. I guess it just felt a little too brutal. And while Sonic Shuffle, practically every minigame will make you lose rings if you lose, just making this more frustrating, because rings are not easy to get in this game compared to how much easier coins were to get in Mario Party. So the minigames might look cool if you're looking at them from still images, but seeing them in motion, it's a total nauseating train wreck. I'll get more on these awful minigames later. So somehow the characters move more sluggish than the admittedly dated controls of the Mario Party N64 trilogy. I was replaying some of the old Mario Party games originally, and I was surprised how badly the controls have aged. I remember them being a lot better in when I was growing up as a kid on the N64, but comparing them to like the entries on GameCube, the GameCube controls are actually really smooth, and they are awful on the N64, but somehow Sonic Shuffle moves even worse than a Mario game. Let that sink in. Why is it that all the Sonic characters in Sonic Shuffle are moving slower than a character like Wario in Mario Party? It just doesn't make sense. The Sonic series is known for high-speed action, yet all of these characters are moving slower than the slowest Mario characters. Also, each of the 5 board maps have these accident mini-games where, at random, one of 2 mini-games that are exclusive to these board maps can be triggered. So nearly every minigame is relentless and punishing, as I said, where it's bad enough that you can lose rings in these minigames, but they are just relentless. They barrage you of projectiles that are nearly impossible to dodge. Meanwhile, the CPU are programmed to just succeed at everything. They are impossible to compete against if you're not a CPU. Going back to how I said the rings were really useless in this game, it really doesn't feel like you really need them for anything at all in this game. You just need them for unlockables that require you to store the rings that you collect at the end. But even then, the unlockables aren't necessary to play the game. They aren't necessary to really unlock anything special. It's just mostly just pictures that you can find in this album. However, there are 4 hidden characters you can unlock, and I can't remember which ones they are, but I know you have to buy certain pictures in the album, and doing that, it'll unlock the characters for you, but it doesn't even bother telling you that you unlock the character in the process. You just gotta discover it for yourself, or look it up online to figure out how to do it properly. Yeah, without like a cheat code to store up on 999 rings, good luck actually saving up, because this game just will not give you any good chances of keeping any rings you might manage to collect, because this game just loves forcing you to lose them throughout like crazy. Starting off, there's only 4 playable characters, with Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. But the 4 hidden characters that can be unlocked for Versus mode, they cannot be used in story mode, unfortunately, but so these hidden characters are Supersonic, Big the Cat, E102 Gamma, and just a random Chow. I don't fully know what the hidden characters can do, per se, but from what I've played, it looks like the Chow can lose a battle without losing rings, making him a bit of a handicapped player. Supersonic is just a clone of Sonic, so there's really nothing special about him, which is sad because, I mean, come on, it's freaking Supersonic, one of the greatest rewards any Sonic player can get in a Sonic game. And Gamma has the slowest movement on the board maps, making him one of the most unbearable characters to play with. And I honestly have no idea what Big the Cat's special ability is. But Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy have some exclusive powers to help give them shortcuts. Sonic's power is honestly the worst, and Supersonic also has the exact same ability. I have no idea how, why, or when it triggers, but every once in a while, Sonic will get a chance for his movement cards to be doubled, allowing Sonic to move twice as far. It sounds like a neat idea, and it could have worked if it was built up every 3 or 4 turns and it gives you the option to use it or wait for a later turn to use it. But because it happens at random and without warning, it can really mess up a lot of strategies players might have had. Like maybe they see that the Precious Stone is only 1 space away, so you just want to select a 1 card. Instead, all of a sudden his ability triggers and it forces you to move 2 spaces, forcing you to miss your destination. And then a CPU will come along the next turn and they'll get it before you, all because of that stupid Sonic ability triggered at random. Yeah, it really sucks. Tails can fly across the spaces that have foxtails on them, allowing him to take shortcuts. Knuckles can climb around these spaces that have his gloves on them for shortcuts. And Amy can catapult herself with her hammer over these hammer spaces for shortcuts. They all basically have the same function. They're just for shortcuts. Each character has their own space, style, and animations to get through them. So yeah, Sonic is one of the worst characters to play as in this game because he doesn't have any shortcut spaces, and that double movement really messes you up more than it helps you. You'd think that if the story mode sucks, then maybe the game would be a lot better to play in Versus mode, which is just the typical party mode, good for multiplayer and such, but no, it's somehow even worse. Unlike single player mode, Versus mode hides all of your cards from your view, unless you're playing on a Dreamcast with a VMU memory card inside of your controller. It will not let you save your progress. So if you ever had to shut the game off because you had to leave or something, it forces you to lose all of your progress. Speaking of progress, there really is none. So if you manage to collect any rings by the end of this, or if you discovered any minigames that you haven't already played in story mode, it won't collect them for you in the Sonic Room mode where you can revisit all this stuff. So yeah, it's really useless. There's also 3 exclusive minigames that are basically used to determine who plays first. So instead of rolling a dice like in Mario Party and seeing who gets the highest number to roll first, instead we have like these 3 mini games, like one that involves throwing darts for the best score, drawing the highest card out of a deck, or just a stupid slot machine. Can this Versus mode get any worse? Oh boy, yes it can. Every time 2 players land on the same space, it triggers an annoying duel game where players must shuffle through their decks and collect the highest numbers. It drags on forever and it occurs way too many times in just one game. To add to the frustration, the loser will lose a turn as well. So unless you're playing with friends, there is no reason for any single player to want to try this atrocious mode. You're better off just playing story mode. But it's too bad that this is the only way to play as the bonus characters. It's too bad they don't give you the option to shut off the duel mode or show your hidden cards or anything like that. It just really ruins this game. I'm honestly not a big fan of the board map selection either. There might be only like 2 of them that I kind of liked, but the first board map is the least harmless one. So it's a good old Emerald Coast from Sonic Adventure, but it's been partially frozen over because of Void. It's got some calming music and nice scenery. It's the only map to have underwater sections, where if we stay down there for 5 turns, the player can drown and spawn back to a different space. So you either gotta move back onto shore for air, or land on an air bubble space. Each map also has a bonus story objective, where completing them will reward the player with a bonus Precious Stone. So these usually involve traveling to a certain space within like 8 turns or something. So in Emerald Coast, you find like a baby dolphin calf, and you have to deliver it to a space to reunite it with its mother. So stuff like that. The second level is Firebird, where we're on a giant bird that was turned into a machine and we have to restore it. I noticed the music in this level, for some reason it reminds me a lot of, I think it was called Shy Guy Beach from Mario Kart Super Circuit. Parts of the wings will blow up over time, and if players are caught in the destruction, they lose 30 rings. Level 3 is Nature Zone, and a part of me wonders if this was originally meant to just be Mystic Ruins, but at last minute they changed it and just called it a different name, because it just reeks of Mystic Ruins. This was probably the second level in this game I kind of liked. We got like these alligator platforms that open and shut their jaws over time, which can either open or shut off shortcuts. Over time, these annoying ruins grow out of the ground and they block off our paths. Level 4 is Riot Train, a runaway train where over time pieces of the train get added or disappear, and we can land on these helicopter spaces to give us shortcuts to get closer to the Precious Stones. It sounds like a fun idea for a board map. I like the idea of being on a train that's like just constantly moving. It's a cool idea, but it wasn't as fun as it sounded. I feel like maybe Mario Party could have pulled this off better. So after that, we unlock a 5th and final level called 4th Dimension Space. It's honestly the worst and most confusing map in the game. It's got a neat theming and all that, being inspired by space constellations, but the gravity-defying layout makes the map a real clustered mess of a maze. I absolutely hate this level. Just everything about it makes you lost. I just don't like it at all. Minigames. So here are the poor excuses for minigames that we are forced to endure throughout. I'll start off with the accident minigames, which randomly trigger depending on which map you're on. So starting with Emerald Coast, the first one is called Sonic Parasol, where we control our players on a beach to collect rings, but there's an Eggman-looking sun that tries burning and blinding us. If we get caught by him, we get blown back and stunned. So before the egg sun goes off, we have to take shade under a wooden shack, but one player can get a hold of an umbrella to protect themselves and collect rings, along with items that wash up on the shore. The other players can steal the umbrella by jumping on whoever wields it. We also have to avoid the crab enemies. Ringtide has a similar setting and goal. Once again, we got a beach setting with crabs to avoid, but there are huge tidal waves that wash up with rings to collect, and they also dump us with a bunch of urchins and logs to avoid. If a player gets washed up, they have to mash the A button to swim back to shore. For each stage, there's usually a third accident stage, but it only occurs at the very end of these levels. So the third accident stage here is Sonic Surfing, which has the character surfing on a giant wave as we poorly steer to collect rings and dodge obstacles. It's a choppy mess. It's hard to look at as well. As for Firebird, Sky Bridge has us having to duck to avoid bridges and jump to collect rings. It's pretty easy. If you're not crazy about rings, though, you can really just cheese this by just holding down the control stick throughout the entire game. And for some reason, this is one of the few minigames where the CPU seem to die very easily. I don't get how they're so overpowered in every minigame. And then the one that you can easily break by just holding the duck button, they're constantly dying at this one. I don't get it. Rapid Climb has us running on the wings of a Firebird by mashing the A button and using the control stick to collect rings and avoid debris. Skydiving has us falling, collecting rings, and dodging stuff. I swear, there's another minigame just like this, except the controls here are a little less annoying, but they're still very awkward. So the only way to dive down is to hold up on the control stick, and every time we try changing the direction, it causes the character to slow down their movement, or it causes them to rise again. And for some reason, you can only move in a circular motion. You think like you could just tilt left or right to kind of move, but no, you gotta move in like a clockwork or counterclockwork motion. It's just a really awkward control scheme, very stiff. For Nature Zone, Croc Attack is one of my least favorite minigames here. We got a button mash to escape a gator's mouth. It's humanely impossible for someone to mash the button fast enough to keep up with the CPU. The CPU just break out with no problem. No matter what I do, I cannot mash it fast enough. It sucks. Worst accident game in this accident of a game. There's no point in even trying. It's not worth busting your thumb over. Ring of Fire has us jumping through rings of fire that come flying towards us. It's one of the better accident minigames. It's funny how Nature Zone has the best and the worst accident game here. Earthquake is a faulty auto runner where we must evade a fissure and dodge trees. It's nothing special. In Riot Train, Through the Tunnel has us running onto a train and dodging obstacles. At first, I thought you'd have to jump over the gaps between the train, but the game fails to mention that the characters will just run over the gaps. Because of this, I kept messing up. I kept getting slowed down because every time you jump, it loses all of your momentum. Otherwise, it's a pretty easy minigame. Ring Lasso has us lassoing bags of rings by pressing arrows and buttons to match the symbols next to the bags. It's one of the better accident games. Stop the Train is basically just the Croc Attack one, but with 4 players working together, but it still rewards whoever did the best in the end. So you just got a button mash, except unlike Croc Attack where you had a button mash only one. This one, it alternates between having a button mash between A or B, depending on which colored headlight on the train is turned on. For Fourth Dimension, Final Frontier has us platforming across appearing and disappearing platforms while collecting rings. The final accident game is Void Battle, a boss fight against Void as he turns into what looks like a Chow automaton or something, I don't know. We need to dodge his attacks and jump on these switches to power up and alter for the finishing blow. And with that, let's get on with the regular minigames. Bomb Relay, a 2 versus 2 game where each team member needs to toss a bomb to their teammate back and forth when an exclamation mark appears for a boost of speed. The first team to toss their bomb into the water wins. Bucket of Rings, another 2 versus 2 game where each team has to work together to gather rings in a bucket and pass it on to their teammate to dump into a minecart. But you have to time things right or you just drop the rings. Why must this game insist on ruining every fun idea that they have to offer? Bungee Jump. One player bungee jumps as they collect rings and try landing on one of the 3 players down below who are holding an item. You'd think that if a player gets their item taken in the end, that means they lose. But no, actually the goal for the 3-player team is they want their item to get taken. They'll get a 20 ring bonus if they succeed. So if the bungee jumper misses any of the 3 items, they lose a bunch of rings for some reason. This game flat out sucks. Egg and the Chicken, an annoying game of chicken where Eggman drops bombs in basketball hoops that are hovering above the characters. We have to press the A button for the characters to run out of the way. The last player to run away before the bombs drop are the winners. And I feel like the timing for this minigame is very delayed. There are many times where I feel like I timed it right, but my character gets bombed anyways. It's not a fun minigame. Eggbots Attack, a 1 versus 3 game where one player pilots a giant 2-legged mech as we try stomping on the other players. It's not a very fun minigame, but it is very silly how the robot just looks like Eggman's pants just got loose and started running away. Egg in Space, a dumb luck minigame where Eggman is trapped in a rocket and we have to blindly run around and find a random switch to launch him. It may be a dumb luck minigame, but the novelty of Sonic and Pals launching Eggman to die in space is morbidly funny. Frosty Rumble. Players run across ice to pick up these little ice blocks and throw them at players while collecting the rings that fall out. It sounds like a fun and chaotic game, but the controls are just way too sluggish and the aiming is terrible. It just ruins the whole experience. Meanwhile, the CPU are overpowered like crazy, just as usual. Fun Sonic. That's like the worst name out of any of these minigames, but it's one of the least offensive minigames here. We bounce off of these colored trampolines, which will break over time, and the closer the trampolines get before breaking, the more rings that you'll collect upon bouncing off of them. It's one of the very few harmless minigames, but it's nothing special. Gargantuan. Eggman turns one of the players into a giant. And what's the first thing the players do upon seeing their friend turned into a giant? Well, they arm up and try shooting them to death, of course. Yeah, it's honestly a pretty mean-spirited minigame. It is stupid fun, though, but too bad the controls suck. It's a 1 versus 3 game where the giant has to stomp on the 3 players to defeat them. You can even stun them with shockwaves by jumping. Meanwhile, the 3 players have to aim and shoot them to defeat the giant. It's a fun and silly idea, but it's ruined by horrible controls on all sides. Great Escape. The players must escape a maze inside of a skyscraper that's about to blow up, Die Hard style. The lights went out and we can't see unless we activate these light switches to give us a brief glimpse of where to find the nearest exit. Otherwise, you really don't need the light switches. If you're looking sharp enough, you might be able to find the exit on your own, depending on how your depth perception or sense of color is, I guess, but it's one of the easier minigames. Jump the Snake. Remember Hot Rope Jump from Mario Party 1 and 2? This is almost the same thing, except way harder and less fun. We get a terrible camera perspective that won't stay still. These horribly animated snakes as they start just whipping around, and the ground starts rotating over time. It's bad enough that this game has such bad controls throughout, but what makes a lot of these minigames so much worse is just how nauseating everything looks. Nothing animates smoothly. Objects and characters are constantly stuttering and janking around, along with really shaky cameras. It's such a shame that such a colorful cel-shaded game is ruined by such nauseating motions. Manic Maze, another boring and unresponsive 1 versus 3 minigame. It's a shame though, this one actually does look like a lot of fun, but the controls just ruin it. So one player finds a magical board game that traps the other 3 players into a ball maze, as the single player tilts the box to try to have the 3 players fall into the hole in the center. I just love the scenario of this. There's something funny about seeing Sonic and pals just being bored and chilling at a store looking for a board game to buy and play, only for everything to go regular show out of nowhere. I just wish the gameplay was good. It feels like tilting the box does nothing. It's like no matter what side you're on, the physics just feel wrong in this mode. Yeah, I just don't like this one. It's not very fun at all. Number Jump. Based on the numbered platform panels from Sonic Adventure, we have to rely on a numbered roulette to jump across panels in numerical order from 1 to 9 in order to reach and defeat Eggman within a time limit. To make the gameplay more annoying, the platforms will alternate, which can mess you up and force you to have to start over. The gameplay of this was much more fun in Sonic Adventure when it didn't require a roulette. Over the Bridge, an auto-running level where we try running over a rickety wooden bridge to outrun a windstorm. We have to try hopping over or avoiding openings that can trip us or slow us down, while also fighting the wind that tries blowing us off the edge. The minigame sounds and looks fun, but once again, it's ruined by slow and clunky controls. Over the Rainbow, one of the least offensive minigames here. It's a simple game of having to hold and release button prompts to have our players hop across these lily pads and reach the rainbow at the end. The collision and physics in this minigame feel really off. It is pretty fast-paced, though. You really gotta put your button inputs in pretty fast. It really makes me nervous how it looks like the players are moving on their own towards the left or right. It always makes it look like they're about to fall off of it, despite how you really have no control over the direction your character's head. All you're doing is controlling how far they jump and when they jump. It's one of the few minigames I was actually able to win many times, but it's still a very faulty minigame. Psychic Sonic. This has some of the most annoying minigame music out of the entire game. In fact, it shares the same music as the minigame I just went over. We have to guess what button will appear on these cards, and we have to press it and hope that our prediction is right. If we predict right, it's a real dumb luck minigame. Shadow Tag. The slowest and most boring game of tag ever. Eggman tags a player who will constantly lose rings unless they tag someone else. We can press the A button for the characters to do a lunge for a short boost of speed, but it has a sluggish recovery. Eggman will slow down the player furthest away from whoever's it, and whoever's it by the end of the game loses. How did this game manage to make a game of tag with Sonic the Hedgehog characters boring and slow? Could you imagine that? Like an actual scenario where characters like Sonic and Tails or Knuckles were playing tag, and you can see them using their abilities to basically cheat. Like Tails can fly away if he is evading someone or Knuckles can dig underground. There's a lot of funny ideas with the idea of Sonic and pals playing tag. How did this game make it so boring? Shoddy work. And no, that wasn't an answer to my last question. This is actually the name of the next minigame. Wow, a minigame whose title confesses the quality of this game. I honestly don't get how this one works really well. It just feels like it randomly determines a winner no matter what. And the CPU always seems to win. There was only one time I ever won this one, and I felt like I didn't really earn it either. So it's a 2 versus 2 game where one player selects, rotates, and throws these shapes down below, as the player below has to line them up and catch them, and they have to have it match the outline of a certain shape. So we have to build these towers that fit within the shape and hope that Eggman won't destroy it by the end. I do find it kind of funny how a giant Eggman just comes stomping by, and it's just so random but kind of funny. So I think it wants you to match within the outline of the shape instead, where I was more focused on just fitting them inside of the shape, but it really feels like it wants you to draw out the outline of the shape first. But I don't know. I just felt like I had some structures that looked more sturdy than my CPU, and they fell down anyway. So it just feels like another faulty mini game. I feel like if Mario Party made this, they probably would have done it better. Sonic Cola, not a fun mini game, but it's a silly little one to watch at least. We just got Eggman shaking up a soda can as he puts it inside of a soda machine, and each player has to take turns picking a soda, and we just watch the characters drink it. But if one manages to get the one that Eggman shook up, we get a little cutscene of it exploding on them, and they're just disappointed. So it is possible for each player to win this minigame without getting the bad soda that Eggman put in there. And if that happens, you do get a cutscene where everyone just walks away happily, and it shows Eggman being disappointed that his plan was foiled. So, obviously, whoever loses the minigame, if they get the bad soda can, they will lose rings in the process. So, I really hate minigames that equal to the equivalent of picking straws, but I'll at least give this one a pass for it's not elimination based, so it doesn't go on forever. It's really quick and simple. It's kind of funny and amusing to watch. I just love how Eggman is portrayed like a non-threatening Hanna-Barbera villain. Sonic Cooking, a very one-sided 1 versus 3 game where one player pilots a giant frying pan as they try tilting the players on the pan away from the rings and towards the flames. No matter what position you're on, this minigame just sucks. I mean, I feel like it's worse if you are on the frying pan. You feel so helpless, but meanwhile, when you're the one steering the frying pan, the CPU just feel like they're glued towards the center of the pan. So no matter what direction you tilt it in, no matter what speed or pattern you try, you won't throw them off. So it's just horrible either way. Sonic DJ, this one feels way too similar to Sonic Cooking, and again, it's not very fun. So it's another one-sided 1 versus 3 game where one player DJs an oversized record player Death Trap as they try spinning the other players on the record into these electric traps. The game is just no fair or fun for the teams of 3, and the controls are just so bad you don't even have any point in trying to fight it. No matter what you do, you're just going to get flung to all this electric nonsense, so why even bother? Usually 1 versus 3 minigames have a way for the one player to lose, but with both this and Sonic Cooking, that really isn't an option. No matter what, player 1 will win. They'll just collect all these rings. Even when you are the one playing as player 1, if you're the one doing all the torturing and collecting all the rings, it's just not fun, though. I take no pleasure in such boring gameplay. Sonic Gunslinger, an arcade shooting game but with awkward controls. We stand in the center of a western-like town and we tilt the crosshairs in directions to shoot these outlaws, but we have to avoid shooting the ladies. My biggest problem with this minigame is that the CPU are too overpowered. They home in on the targets ridiculously fast. It just doesn't give human players a chance fast enough to compete. The only thing I like about this is how each character gets their own unique cowboy hat. Ever since Mario Party 2, I've always loved the novelty of seeing characters you know and love appearing in different outfits for certain events or levels, so this is the only charm that this minigame has. Sonic Live. Yeah, I notice how a lot of these minigames are basically just titled Sonic insert word here. So in this one, each character has an electric guitar. We have to hold one of the 4-lettered buttons when the spotlight hits us. But if a player keeps playing the guitar when the spotlight moves away from them, they lose rings. The minigame is not good, but it is kind of fun to see the characters rocking out on guitars, even if the music is really bland. Sonic Tag, yet another tag game, yet somehow worse. Eggman tags a player, preventing them from collecting rings, while the other 3 players are free to run around and collect rings across this Mystic Ruins looking temple. So the player who is it has to tag one of the other 3 players to make them it. Whoever's it by the end loses and gets taken away by Eggman, and they lose a bunch of rings, while the other players get to keep whatever rings they collected. Aside from how awful the controls are in this, one thing I really hate about this is the camera. It actually does give you 3 zoom options to zoom in or out to try to make your view better, but all of them are just horrible angles. Either way, it feels like you're just going to blindly bump into whoever's it. Sonic Tank. I'll go as far as to say that this is the only good minigame in this mess of a game. It's a top-down tank battle with rapid-fire tanks. It's fun to see the tanks break apart over time until they explode as they send their drivers flying away. What shocked me the most about this minigame is how it's the exact opposite of what I was dreading this minigame would be like. Considering how this game has the slowest and clunkiest controls out of any Sonic game, not to mention how usually in video games tank gameplay is known for having an infamous phrase known as tank controls, so I was expecting this minigame to be a slow and painful battle. Instead, it is loose, it is fast, and it managed to make tank battles fun. There are even power-ups that give you a boost. I was not expecting to enjoy this minigame, but I was left surprised. Too bad one good minigame does not make up for all of the problems that this game has. Sonic the Thief, a 2 vs 2 minigame where one team member moves the dial from a safe, while the teammate has to press the A button as soon as the first teammate finds the right dial. They'll know by an exclamation mark that appears. Whoever opens the most safes wins. Sometimes the timing for opening the safe feels horribly off though. Stop and Go. Similar to the Mario Party 2 minigame Sneak and Snore. Eggman has his back turned as we have to sneak behind Eggman to steal his item, but if he turns around and spots anyone moving, he will eliminate them from the game by freezing them. I was never a fan of stealth gameplay, so yeah, that should give you a hint on what I think of this minigame. Thor's Hammer. Eggman attacks us with lightning attacks as we try dodging them, and he'll even try dive bombing us. It just kind of reminds me of like some of those mini games from Mario Party, like the one where the Hammer Brothers throwing hammers at us, we gotta dodge it. Except I'll argue that was even better. At least you had coins to collect in that one, so. Tractor Beam Tag. Geesh, this is the 3rd time this mess of a game lazily rehashes a tag minigame. This time 3 players are it at once, and they have to move together to tag the other player. Once someone else is tagged, a random player gets pushed out of the circle, and whoever isn't it by the end wins. So, unlike other games where only one person is it, this one has 3 people it. So, it's whoever's outside of that 3 it circle who is the winner in the end. Admittedly, a game of tag where 3 players are it's an interesting idea, but it's ruined by not ending when the lone player gets tagged. And this minigame drags on way too long, not to mention how slow it is. They try throwing in these little boost pads, but only the single non-it player gets to use them. So yeah, I don't like this one. Twister. The players get sucked into a tornado as we dodge trees and other obstacles while collecting rings as we fall. Just like every other minigame, the controls and camera in this are awful, as the camera keeps constantly swerving in and out, and it just gives an impossible depth perception, and everything's just moving around. It just looks so janky, it's nauseating. Wrong Way Climb. Funny to point out how this one is very similar to a minigame from Mario Party 3. So there was a 1 vs 3 minigame in Mario Party 3, where one player tries flattening 3 players with boulders, as the team of 3 try running up a hill. And if one player reached the top, the team of 3 would win. Sonic Shuffle takes that fun idea and ruins it by allowing the single player to spam more boulders at once, while forcing the teams of 3 to have to button mash to run up. And they can only move across a 3-railed movement instead of moving in any direction like in Mario Party 3. So no matter how fast I button mash, I can never reach the top in time. This minigame just sucks. Zero G Snapshot. Oh, this is one of my least favorite minigames, and for some reason, this is the minigame that keeps getting picked multiple times in one session. I swear, every time I play a game of this, it has to pick this minigame 3 or 4 times every single game. It's a real annoying minigame where the characters have to swim around with zero gravity as they try moving towards the center of a camera's view as we fight to hog the spotlight and make a pose before the camera goes off. Not only are the controls awful and unresponsive, but the way it determines who won is messed up. There were times where more than one CPU made it into the shot, so you think it would be the one front and center who would win, but instead it hands it over to the CPU, blocked off in the background. It's just a faulty minigame in a number of ways. So, bottom of the line, Sonic Shuffle is one of the worst Sonic games ever made, but would I call it the worst party game ever made? Heck no. This game is atrocious, but there are much worse party games out there, with even less minigames, less charms, less theming, worse board maps, or worse gameplay and mechanics. Honestly, Disney Party for GameCube, that's the worst party game I've ever played. And shocking enough, that one was also made by Hudson, the same makers as this and Mario Party, and somehow it's even worse than these games. It's too bad there aren't a lot better alternatives to a better Sonic-styled Mario Party clone. There was the party mode in Sonic and the Secret Rings on Wii. It had a decent roster with the main 4 from Sonic Shuffle, along with 4 hidden characters being Cream, Silver, Shadow, and Blaze. The board map modes were not very good. I wouldn't even say any of them stood out. And too bad most of the minigames were pretty bad and slow-paced. Most of them were just ruined by terrible motion controls. The most impressive thing about the Secret Rings party mode was honestly the graphics. For an early first year like Wii title, the graphics were actually pretty good looking. Especially for when you consider that this was around the era where HD was the thing. You had Xbox 360 and the debut of PS3. Meanwhile, here's a game that had GameCube graphics, and it looks pretty good. It looked better than any Sonic game on the GameCube, that's for sure. The only other close options we got to a Sonic-styled Mario Party clone were the Mario and Sonic Olympic crossover games. So the mini-games in those weren't all great or perfect. They were still a much better collection of games compared to Sonic Shuffle and even the Secret Rings party mode. Plus, you have the fun novelty of Mario characters competing or teaming up with Sonic characters. A novelty we'd be lucky to see again in the future, since the stupid Olympics have more faith in NFT scams compared to 2 of the most profitable franchises in gaming. Seriously, what the hell is wrong with this world? I would honestly love to see a proper modern-day Mario Party-inspired Sonic game. Heck, I'd even love a Mario and Sonic Party crossover. A modern Sonic Party would be great, with the gameplay more akin to the N64 or GameCube Mario parties, but implementing the action-packed speed and excitement of Sonic games. To have Sonic and pals running across a board map with the loops, the dash pads, more interactive Sonic NPCs and enemies. It would be neat to get more playable characters like Vector, Espio, Charmy, Tikal, Rouge, Jet, Wave, and Storm, since they really weren't featured in any of these party-styled games. And so, Sonic Shuffle is just a sad waste of potential, and I don't ever plan on going back to this painful mess of a game. It's not even worth playing to see how bad it is. It's just overall a huge disappointment. 3 out of 10. That's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and have a great day.